Great. And so we're now recording. Everyone, welcome so much to track 5 of the Health Equity and Social Justice Conference with DePaul University and Che. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Emily Tamblin. I am the Manager of Community Partnerships for DePaul for our Master of Public Health program. And we have a really exciting presentation today. So this is the skill building workshop. So you want to start a podcast, getting research and community voices to the masses. We are with Rabih Dahdouh, Clinical Research Associate with Northwestern University, Cassandra Osei, MPH Clinical Research Project Manager with Northwestern University, Ivy Leung, Clinical Research Project Manager with Northwestern University, and Araceli Estrada, Program Assistant with Northwestern University. And thank you all so much for being here. Just a couple reminders. We have you all on mute right now. The presenters might ask for input, but if they don't, if you would keep yourself on mute for the moment, feel free to drop any questions or thoughts in the chat, and we're happy to help you throughout. So thank you so much, and feel free to take it away.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the presentation that we have. Again, we want to keep this informal. If you have questions, you're going to hear different voices and different perspectives from our team. And we encourage you, if you wanted to ask a question, please raise your hand. And so we wanted to start with, I think, a chat question in chat, just to kind of break the ice a little bit. The first one is, if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be? And just go ahead and type away in chat. It could be, any character in your life or any person that you wanted to have dinner with. And the other one should be easy question, although it could split the vote here. Deep dish or thin crust pizza?
I see one answer.
Great.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, wow. I'd be,
Yeah. So we see some answers. Frida Kahlo and thin crust pizza. Ida B. Wells and thin crust pizza. Andrew Solomon and deep dish. Mother Teresa Calcutta and deep dish. Michelle Obama and thin crust. That's some very cool answers. Okay, and then feel free to keep on adding comments or questions in the chat box as we get started. So a brief introduction to the team. Who are we? So we are from the Center for Health Equity Transformation, and the podcast that we host is called Skinny Trees, Left Health for All. This is a podcast from the Simon Research Lab at the Center for Health Equity Transformation at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine, hearing voices from the research and community with a focus on health equity. Conversations and interviews discuss the importance of achieving health equity, highlighting health disparities, and exploring innovative ways to improve health for all. So if you see on the right side of the screen, you have some of our handles for social media and different ways that you can listen, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. If we can move on to the next slide. So here we have a poll. I'm hoping Emily can help us pull up. Yep, there you go. So you should be able to see a poll. We just want to get to know who's in the room right now. So if you can select what field you're in, and I believe you have multiple choices. So we're going to give you a few seconds for the people in the room to complete the poll. Almost there. Most people have voted. I think we're waiting on a few folks to answer this question. Awesome. So it seems like most people are in academia or their academic affiliates. And second to that, folks in the room are from community or nonprofit organizations. So that's pretty helpful for us to know who's in the room right now. And we can share results. I'm gonna stop sharing. Sorry, I haven't used the poll function very often. Next slide. Okay, next slide, a continuation, what we have done. So the first episode from the podcast release was released in October of 2016. We've had a lot of really interesting guests, including former commissioner of the Chicago Department of Public Health, Dr. Julie Morita, another health equity champion, Dr. Linda Ray Murray, Jose Lopez, executive director from the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, and as well as many students and community leaders and just very interesting health equity champions in many different areas. A few stats just to get us started. On SoundCloud, we've had 2,819 recorded plays. A total of published episodes has been 23, and social media engagement between Twitter and Instagram and one more other social media platform, I believe, has been around 18,000 social media engagements. So that's kind of where we started. And why we started the podcast. Skinny Trees aims to lift and highlight voices of people from the research, community, and policy worlds who are doing work that advances health equity. By doing so, Skinny Trees is creating an easy and accessible way for a larger audience to learn about the health equity work being conducted at Northwestern University and in the city of Chicago. Next slide, please. And another poll, Emily, if you could help us pull this next poll up. Have you had or do you have a podcast? So this one's pretty easy. It's a yes or no. Oh, and just an FYI, Rabih posted this in the comment. So for those wondering what a benchmark is for a good episode, reach, that can be anywhere from around 200 downloads or plays would be considered good reach in the science or academic podcast field. So we have one person that selected yes, they have had a podcast before, but the majority of people in the room have not. And I'm a little curious if that one person that has had a podcast can tell us a little bit about it in the chat box.
I can talk for a second if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I'm a fourth-year medical student, and 2 years ago, some of my colleagues who are also medical students and I started this podcast under the direction of one of our faculty mentors who encourages the use of different social media and different types of platforms just to engage with the medical community and support medical education. So we've been releasing for 2 years now. We did take a bit of a break while we had some school stuff going on, but at this point we had 43 episodes posted with about 20,000 total listens. And we just talked to a lot of different people in the medical field. A lot of them are from our institution or different people that we know that are experts or want to get the word out on different types of health related topics.
Wow, that's very impressive. We hope that we can talk to you a little bit more about your experiences as the presentation goes on. And for those that are interested, because I'm assuming the folks on this skill building workshop are either like Mara shared, have a podcast or are interested in starting their own podcast. So we hope we can share a little bit more about our experiences. I think we're ready for the next slide. And this is just a continuation of why we started. So Skinny Trees Lift Health for All was actually started by 2 former staff members from the CHET team. And it was born out of central themes of Chicago Check, which is a collaborative tri-institutional project that's within our center. And Chicago Check aims to advance cancer health equity through meaningful scientific discovery, education, training, and community engagement. Through ongoing conversations with those involved in Chicago Check, it became increasingly clear that the story of health inequities needed to expand beyond the walls of academia and community organization meeting spaces. This is when Skinny Trees was born. This podcast was created for the student who wants to learn more, the community who wants to tell their story, the patient that felt left behind, the physician who sees the day-to-day issues unfold before them, and anybody else who ever thought about the world of healthcare access outside of their bubble. This podcast is for you, and we hope that you enjoy it. So that's just a little bit about our start. And for this, how we did it, does anyone want to take it from here?
Thank you, Araceli. I'll do a quick kind of run through of this. Basically, we should disclose we don't have a budget assigned to this podcast team, so we don't have a formal budget where we used our discretionary funds to buy for some equipment. You'll hear about that later on, how we approached it. But it was an incredibly small budget. There was a slow start in the sense that we give credit to our former colleagues, Shania Taylor and Jen Cooper, who helped to really bring this to launch it along with the team. And we carried it forward, and we did a sort of renewal in that sense where, so the podcast took a bit of a hiatus between when the team left and we took it on as to renew it and expand it. And so it was a slow to start in the first episodes, and we got our bearings and we understood the rhythm and the way to do things. And we added more people to the team, which really gets at the idea that staying flexible is so important. We first thought about, do we focus on a particular theme? Do we do a mini series? And we definitely, with the pandemic, we had to be very flexible. We did a mini series on coronavirus pandemic, talking to community voices and researchers alike. And that was a great opportunity and showcased how we could continue this. And actually it was a great way to continue engaging the community and the public. And those behind on the ground as things were unfolding in the pandemic, and allowed us to really tell the story and reach a wider audience. So I just encourage those who feel like this is too much, that you can start slow, manage your own expectations in terms of how much you'd like to start out doing. And you may come across ways where you feel like you're not doing as well as you would like to, but I encourage everyone to keep pushing, keep producing what you feel passionate about, and staying flexible throughout the whole thing. Thank you. All right, which brings us to a chat question. Okay, this is great. So those in like to either raise your hand or put it in chat. When you hear the word podcast, what comes to mind? What's the word association you get? Besides Skinny Trees, academic. Okay, yeah. All right, any more? Learning. All right, thank you. Semi-casual conversations. Right. Okay. short and interesting topics. Right, so no one said radio. No one said a talk radio. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it is. You know, some of them have that radio feel more than others, especially as it's expanded and it's grown so much. But you definitely hear more about that from my colleague. I think that's the next slide we have. In terms of the how-tos and taking you through. Sorry, to take it back to Araceli, my colleague, to finish up with our brief introduction, and then we'll go from there. Thank you. Low floor, high ceiling. That's good. Thank you.
So I think the only new information on the slide is the over 2,300 unique visitors to the website. Do you want to go on to the next slide, Ivy, please? Yeah, I think that was it for introduction. Ivy, do you want to talk a little bit about how folks can get started?
So you need to think about, like, why do you want to start a podcast and how do you want to be recognized? What makes you stand out and how are you different from other podcasts? Maybe outside of your area or your geographical area or your work area. How are you going to stand out from the other podcasts? So you need to know what's out there already. And then we'll also talk about the different equipment. So from the very basic, or for people who are more serious or have the budget to invest a little bit more, and what type of software that consideration that you can use, and what's available for free or what might be a little bit costly, and what's the distribution method? How are you going to promote yourself and your podcast? Where are you going to be posting your podcast, and what social media are you going to be on? Okay, I think is this Cassandra?
Yep, it's me. Hi, everyone. So the following set of PowerPoints will speak generally to podcasts, although they can apply to more academic podcasts, which is what we particularly do as a team and as a center. So when you ask yourself why you want to start a podcast, there are major considerations to have, and it really begins with identifying a clear mission or a focus, because you don't want listeners to be confused about what the point of your podcast is. And as you develop episode ideas, you certainly want those episodes to match the mission or the focus you have. So making sure your focus has depth is very important, because the last thing you want to do is to follow an idea that doesn't have any substance. And by that, I mean having enough content to support a season or 2 or 3, or if your goal is to just do sound bites of cool ideas and points, then maybe don't do a podcast. You may want to consider a TikTok, which allows you to do those cool little sound bite things. So podcasts are generally for content that spans from 15 minutes to 2 hours long. And that's per episode, assuming that your content is meaningful or has value. And you want your focus to be unique enough where you have a voice and a presence, but not so overdone that you are oversaturating the market, which is what my colleague mentioned, because you don't want to beat a dead horse, as the term goes, with a topic that already exists. So for example, if you think of true crime or entertainment podcasts, there are so many of them that you can find, but each one has a particular angle, and that makes them unique. And that's what's drawing you in, as opposed to maybe tuning into something else. It's that unique factor for that podcast that makes you want to come back and keep listening. So always think about what makes you stand out, what makes you unique, and that may require some research on your end. And you also want to be able to define your audience. And again, that's where research comes in and becomes important. So who is the demographic you want to listen to your content. You want to be able to identify maybe race, gender, socioeconomic status, sometimes location and circumstances. By circumstances, for example, is your listener population pregnant or not? Because that can determine the type of content you want to put out there. It has to be that specific, and here's why. With a defined audience, without a defined audience, you actually run the risk of your content just kind of being put out in the void, where you hope people listen to it because it's an interesting topic. However, people don't necessarily live in monoliths, and you want a particular crowd. If you do want a particular crowd, you have to do the work to draw them in and also keep them listening for extended periods of time. And that's how you can do things like giveaways, for example, or responsive surveys to not only grow your brand, but to grow your sound and also improve it over time. And also, you want to identify why you chose that audience. And if you don't know why, you may have to reconsider the mission or your focus because it could be relevant to them. So with that, you want to also determine your format, and it could be a combo of things, or you can choose a particular type of content that is your lane. The important thing is that you stay true to what that format is, whether it's entertainment, whether it's storytelling, journalism, unstructured interviews, conversations, things like that. So next slide, please. In getting recognized, at this point, you've decided why you want a podcast. You then want to get people to know your content and your sound. And that requires identifying if this is a content you want to do on your own or with a partner, and that could be like a secondary or an additional host that will work with you. Consider why you want that format and what is the benefit of that. So if you have a second host, for example, what value do they add? Is it comedic value? Do they come in with the hard-hitting questions? Are they offering support in some ways for you to where you're bouncing ideas off of each other? What is that role? You want that to be very clear so that you're not talking over each other or losing voices, things like that. Then create a logo. The logo creation is something that most early podcasters either jump the gun on too early or don't even consider it until the end. There's kind of a sweet spot in terms of defining your logo. And it's quick and easy to make that mistake, but a logo certainly takes time to identify. That's all part of the research that you do once you define what your content is going to be. And it should be ideally the name of your podcast with or without a graphic. And that's if you find a graphic necessary, but sometimes it may not be. It really depends, because your logo ultimately identifies your brand. And if your logo does not speak to the content, don't use it. And if people have to wonder what your logo is about, and particularly those who are not familiar with you or your work, then there may be a disconnect. So you want to go back to the drawing board. So you want to also determine if you want guests or if there's a potential for it, depending on the type of content that you do. And that comes down to figuring out what your mission or focus is. How long do you want these episodes to be? Who do you think would add value if you brought them in as guests? And lastly, what is your sound? When people tune in, what do you think they want to hear in terms of an intro? What is the music that makes them identify, oh yeah, that's this podcast? So for example, Skinny Trees, our signature sound is a banjo. Once people hear it, they're like, oh, yep, that's Skinny Trees right there. So they know that this is affiliated with our brand. So you have 5 to 10 seconds truly to grab people's attention in terms of hearing a podcast, because especially now that everything is done virtually and we're hearing meetings going in and out, you really want to grab attention quick, because that fatigue is there from us listening all day to meetings, being stimulated consistently through audio. So you really want to be able to grab attention in the first 5 to 10 seconds. So what is that intro and what is that sound that brings people in? Next slide, please. And once you get your sound, you want to figure out what your podcasting style is. So how do you banter? And that's something to consider in terms of that being a part of your signature sound. Do you want to add jokes? Do you want to add little sound clips? Do you want to add pieces of interviews that really add value to your episode? What is the thing that makes people curious to know more? Because remember, you have to keep people hooked in for about 15 minutes to 2 hours. So with that, you also want to know, what is my outro? How do I end this podcast? And the standard, of course, is to plug in your handles and your social media to make sure people can find you, but also think of, how do you want to be remembered? So as you're ending your episode, how can people leave feeling like, wow, this was a good episode, or wow, I can't wait till next week to hear more, rather than, or maybe you want to leave them with a cliffhanger, depending on what your type of content is, so that they're excited to tune into next time and keep hearing more. Next slide, please. With software consideration, there are a lot of software out there. I'll go ahead and describe what some of them are. With QuickTime, that's kind of usually standard on most computers, PCs and Macs included. And it is the best for quick recording, but editing capabilities are limited. You can also, now that we're using Zoom, you can do Zoom, but with Zoom, you have to be aware that there may be some sound quality issues, so it may not be the best. Plus, you can't really edit through Zoom. You also have voice notes if you're doing iPhones, for example. Again, good for recording. Sound quality is not the best, and you also cannot necessarily edit. You can cut clips, but you can't edit the sound. Then you have GarageBand, which you can edit, you can record within it, but that particular software is best for clipping sounds together, I found. And it's good for those who are just getting their feet wet in terms of learning how to mix sounds together. Audacity is another program. It's what I like to call the poor man's version of GarageBand with a little bit of Adobe Audition. It can be found on PCs a lot easier. It's also, I believe, widely available on Mac iOS platforms as well. But there can be a bit of a learning curve with Audacity, but you can record and edit on it. Then you have Audition and Logic Pro, which are actually industry standard because you can record, edit, produce, mix, master, all of that, your own sound. And if you are able to learn how to use any of those, but more so Audition and Logic Pro, there's certainly a lot of value that comes out of it because you know your brand best. And if you were to hire out for a freelance editor, that can go, at least on the low end, somewhere from 25 to 45 an hour, or those who charge a flat fee for about $100 per hour. And that's on the low end. I've seen those who charge as much as 75 per hour or even 200 per hour with a flat fee of 500. So it can get really pricey if you're not sure what you're looking for, but in really knowing how to edit on your own, you know what you need for your content, you know what you're looking for, you know how to tweak the sound best for your listeners, and you have that ear, you're developing an ear for proper mixing and mastering and producing. Next slide, please. So bare bones equipment for those who don't really may not have the budget at the time to invest yet or just getting started. So you can start as simple as a cell phone with any voice recording capabilities such as voice notes on iPhone. I'm not familiar with Androids, but I'm sure there are some recording capabilities on any of the Android phones available. Laptops usually come pre-equipped with QuickTime, for example. Again, Audacity, GarageBand are some of the basic software that you can use to get started with some of the quick edits, and recording as well, doing them all in one rather than recording on QuickTime and then being able to upload them to another system to do editing. You also just need a quiet room to talk, to engage, whether it's you talking or having multiple people talking, you need that space. Headphones to listen in to the content that you've produced so that you can go back, make any changes. An external hard drive or cloud drive, which is extremely important so that you can save what you're doing. The worst thing you want to have happen is you record a great episode, something happens to your computer, and then you lose it all. So then at that point, you're stuck. You may have to re-record again. You won't get that same great sound that you had, or you just kind of lose it because the guest that you had come on can no longer redo the episode for whatever reason. So always have a backup with this. And a stocking or a sock with a microphone. And for those who may not be familiar with what a pop filter is, it is kind of a circular device that goes over a microphone, and it allows you to talk to a microphone, and it softens a lot of those hard sounds that you hear when you're any words with P's, T's, S's, so that you don't get that hissing, that sharp ticking sound that comes with those harsh words. And a pop filter is meant to really soften that down so you're not hearing it as harshly. But if you don't have access to a pop filter, because they can be expensive, a stocking or a sock over a microphone of sorts or over a headphone mic even can work just as well. And you also need 1 to 2 hours of time to record and or edit as well, but it can also extend beyond that. Next slide, please. And equipment for serious and seasoned listeners, or those who may have more of a budget to really buy more. The microphones that you want to consider are Rodeo brand, which are really the higher on the higher end of quality in terms of industry standard. Any laptop with podcasting software for recording and production, so Adobe Audition or Logic Pro, the ability to download creative assets for sounds. So if you're not skilled to develop or mix and master your own sound, you can certainly purchase already pre-made sound and own the licensing to them. That way you can use it for your intro, your interlude, your outro, or anything that you want. That way, you know where to take pauses, plug in that sound, this is the sound that I want for my intro, so people know this is my podcast, this is how I want to end my sound, things like that. You also want a quiet room, and on top of having a quiet room, you want it soundproofed. That way you're not getting excess sound coming in or anything that's really making your sound like you're yelling in an echo chamber. So a quick fix to that would be to buy particular soundproof foam or padding. And if you don't have that, you can use egg cartons, which also works really well if you have a small space and you feel like putting egg cartons all over the place. As I mentioned, pop filters and stocking or a sock is a good substitute for that. Some quality noise canceling headphones and an external hard drive or a cloud drive. And as you up your budget or your equipment, you certainly extend your time in terms of editing. So 2 to 4 hours or more, because now you have more products you can work with. So now you're being very specific in terms of, I know how to podcast, so this is what I want to do to mix and master my sound. Next slide, please.
I'm going to interrupt real quick, Cassandra. We have a question. What is the budget range to start a podcast?
Budget range can start as low as $0. And it can go as high as maybe $5,000 to $10,000 for those who really want to spend on it. But it really doesn't take much. Again, you can do it on a very shoestring budget with any of the software that you may have already pre-downloaded onto your computer, and just go ahead, record it, cut it into pieces if you'd like, and then distribute it to test it out. So yeah. So with distribution, there are some industry available platforms, and that includes things like SoundCloud, the Libsyn, Buzzsprout, Anchor FM. Some of you may have heard of these already, and they all serve lots of different purposes. And they also have a lot of drawbacks depending on what you use, whether it is usability, the data you can collect, how much you're paying to use them, and the creative agency that you have using these distribution platforms. So it's important to determine if you can distribute your content onto the major listening platforms if you're using these tools, and also if people can download your episodes if you find that your audience likes to listen offline. So SoundCloud, for example, is a great distribution tool because it allows you to download to iTunes, Google Play Store, and also Spotify. And it's its own platform as well, where you can listen directly onto it. But there is a payment wall depending on what you're looking for and depending on your budget as well. And it doesn't offer as lot of creativity as something like Anchor FM, for example, which actually allows you to create sound bites of what you have recorded, where you can do things like making blooper episodes and putting it all together so people can see the fun side of whatever it is that you create, because they're not exposed to that yet. Or, you know, people can download or can listen without having to download an extra platform. So for example, again, SoundCloud, you have to download their platform to some extent to be able to listen directly through them, whereas Buzzsprout, you may not have to, depending on what you're doing. So they all have their drawbacks, and it really depends on what you're looking for and what you want to explore. In terms of distribution though, or platforms that accept these distribution channels, iTunes is very particular, and that's something that a lot of people should be aware of, because they really like to license and protect the content that comes in and what already exists. So they're very finicky sometimes with SoundCloud. If your RSS feed is not properly inputted, they are very particular with Libsyn, which is another distribution platform. And that's because Libsyn and iTunes, Apple in particular, have a battle in terms of kind of trying to own certain things with industry. So it's about ownership. I think one of them is trying to buy or merge. And these are things that you may or may not want to be aware of. So it's worth really exploring what distribution platforms are out there, what are the pros and cons, and what works for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have a poll. And Emily, if you could pull up the poll. If you listen to podcasts, what is your favorite category? Okay. I will go ahead and, all right, looks like majority of folks love society and culture. Second place, comedy. And we have a split on true crime and health and fitness and news. All right. Okay. So now that you've done all the work to figure out what your podcast is about, you've figured out your audience, you know how you want to record, how you want to distribute, and you've done it all, how do you promote it? This is most important because it's all about how will people find you. And social media can become your best or worst friend here, because you have to know to some extent the algorithms, and that comes back to knowing your audience. And if that is defined, the algorithms can work for you. So for example, if you are developing a podcast content and you distribute it out there onto Facebook, for example, Facebook's algorithms are very finicky. In order to properly have listenership, or people actually see your content pop up on their newsfeed to know who you are, you have to have a defined audience. And YouTube is similar in that regard. I think a lot of these other social media platforms are moving in that direction, where if you're not defining who your content is going to, they're most likely going to stick it in the bottom to where not a lot of people are viewing it to begin with. So you need to know things like gender, demographic, age, sometimes socioeconomic status. I know Facebook is requesting that. I have my beliefs on why, but I'm not going to get into that. But you really want to be as specific as possible to be able to identify who will be listening to my podcast. And then as I grow, will this change? And if it does change, well, will I change my podcast to fit the new folks coming in? Or do I want to stay true to my home base and want everyone to fit in to what I'm already producing? So that's something that you want to figure out. And that can happen if you have organizational affiliations or listservs, because everyone affiliated with a particular organization may not be the original core listenership of your content to begin with. So you want to be able to figure out if, well, will tuning into those who are coming in help me expand my audience, or will it alienate who already exist? And if they alienate who exists, that may mean you're watering down your content to make it acceptable or digestible to everyone. And that's a drawback you have to consider if you want to do. So you want to also share in your networks, because they are your biggest supporters, usually those who have been listening to your podcast since they started and since the sound was bad, because they have watched you grow. So that's the best way to get support there. And then create a website so that people can find you. And you want to make sure your logo is there when you do so. And make sure that the episodes are easy to find, easy for download, especially for those who want offline listening capabilities. And then also easy to share. So have that share button prevalent somewhere so that you can get more free promotion on your end. And next slide.
I'm going to talk about some recommendations and best practices. So the average episode duration and length is best to have the conversation around 30 minutes, and then adding your intro, interlude, outro, and any disclaimer that you might need to include public episode is the best, around 40 to 45 minutes. Cassandra earlier mentioned a lot of episodes range from 15 minutes to 2 hours, but the best from our research to find that 30 to 45 minutes would be best, because people don't have to pause and stop and then come back later if the episode is too long, and they might forget about it, or they lost where they were listening to if it's too long of an episode. And also need to consider about the number of speakers, because this is a podcast. If there's too many speakers, some voices might be very similar, and they can't tell between who's talking and who's the guest and who's the host. And also people might overlap while they're talking. And so if you have limited number of people, listener would be easier to distinguish who's the host, who's the guest, and who are the different hosts. And we ideally you would prepare all the interview questions if you have guests, and then assign the question to who is asking and who is answering, so people won't overtalk each other, or on the air between the guests they might talk about, oh, maybe this person can answer instead of me, I don't know. So we'll so if I were asking a question, I would name that guest, direct that question to that one person, so they don't have to worry about and wonder who's going to answer first. And then we also have to prepare with the guests. We share the expectation, let them know how the episode goes and how the question goes. And also we ask ahead if there's any sensitive or controversial questions to see if it's okay to ask them, or if we should just omit those questions. And sometimes we give them the question the day of the interview or the night before, just to give them an idea. We don't want them to prepare too much sometimes. So it's more a natural interview, but then we also want to let them know what type of question we'll be asking. And here we have one of our interview with our Chicago Czech fellows. And then the bottom picture is when we went to Urban Growers Collective. It was a cold, rainy day to visit the farm. It was our first outdoor interviews. And then, so in the beginning of the interview, we tried to warm up the guests with some icebreaker question, kind of like in the beginning of this workshop. We asked them, what's your favorite food? What's the last movie that stirred emotion in you? So it just kind of make them feel more comfortable. We might not be very familiar with our guests, and try to get that conversation going, get some laughters going. And don't be afraid to change things up. Try different things to see what's work for you and your audience. So on the right, bottom right pictures, our center's strategic directors interviewing Roman Terry on gun violence, because that's something that she's passionate about and she's familiar with them. So we have guest hosts a lot of the time with our team. If someone is really passionate about that topic, we don't have to be the one to always do all the interviews. And also get continuous feedbacks from listeners, from the guests, from colleagues and peers, and also from other podcasters to see what other best practices are out there. We learned a lot from Northwestern, the Breakthrough podcast, a lot, because they have longer experience, they have more audience. So we asked their support a lot of the time as well. And here we also interviewed Dr. Fernando and Dr. Raj on health equity in Chicago. And I'm gonna hand this over to Rabih for a game.
We're gonna play a game, but before we get to the game, actually, I don't want to miss the question that was posted earlier. I think it's an important question by Laquan McMahon. I'm just gonna read the question in chat so we get a refresher. The question is essentially, what would the process look like if you're just a person with diverse work experience, an idea to talk about, and no institutional buy-in from your current employment? And so this is a good question. I think the idea when you want to start a podcast, and this is, I'm opening up to the group here to please chime in with what you think would be your take on this. But from my point of view, I would say that we were fortunate that we were given the creative outlet to start the podcast. But if I wasn't there when the podcast first started, so maybe Ivy could or even Maggie actually is on the call here. She's one of our team members who was present for that. But I think if it's presented in a way where you're saying, the amount of input is not going to be maybe taking, or maybe here's what I'd say if you're presenting it in such a way where it's like a positive asset to everything else. So it's adding on to your mission statement of your organization, or something where you're using it as this is like a opportunity to put this out there and get more attention to something you're already doing, then that's a good thing. I don't see how that could be interpreted as bad, unless perhaps maybe the effort it would take to continue like your rhythm you're proposing to interview and post episodes. The credibility question, I think it's absolutely gotten a lot more credible in general. I think scientific journals do podcasts too now, where a lot of there's one by the New England Journal of Medicine. I think some actually even require some interviews with authors to get them to give a 2-minute summary of their published article, and it really adds to the whole aspect of that. But I'll open up the rest of the team. Let me know if you have any way you'd like to answer this question.
I would certainly add that maybe you want to consider having your podcast idea just be your passion project. It may not have to be tied to your institution, because if you feel as if you have a good idea and you want to execute, do it. If you have the capacity on your own time to make it happen, do so, and grow in that aspect for yourself in a way that's not attached to an institution. And there could be a lot of value in that for yourself, to where you're learning a lot about the process and to where you can improve the content and then come back to your institution and say, this is what I've done. Look at it. All right, can we bring it in? And that way you have built your credibility right there as someone who knows how to podcast and create and edit content. And if you don't have folks you can draw from, talk to those in your community that you already have connections with, because they at times have narratives that can really be powerful, that is untapped. So make use of your connections and certainly bet on yourself always.
Yeah, I want to add that I totally agree with what Cassandra said. But I also want to add to think about not just your professional network, but your personal network too. Friends from high school, from college, they are all doing different things that may be something that you're interested in and align with what you want to do in your podcast. Interview those people to start off with, even your family.
That's a great point, Ivy. That maybe remind me of StoryCorps has an app you can download, and I've actually used that to interview family members. It's a really great way. It's structured, gives you the great questions to ask, and it's a podcast episode is when you're interviewing family members using StoryCorps, and it sets it up for you nicely. Well, great. If there's no other questions, of course, feel free to chime in. But I like to play a quick game because I think it's just fun to sort of get at, the podcast universe is large, but want to see how tuned in the audience is to see if you can spot the fake, or if each one of it's real or fake. So the first one I'll present, Women Belong in the House. So here's a short description: a podcast that seeks to understand the state of gender representation in the office and ask how Congress would change if it looked more like the people it represents. By quick chat, like go ahead and punch in if you think that's real or fake. The Women Belong in the House. Okay, got one real. Okay, 3 real, 4. Okay, everyone's saying majority real. It is in fact real. So congratulations, you spotted that correctly. The next one, A Time for Everything. This podcast explores the phenomenon of time as it stretches through the universe and relates it to personal stories of triumph and despair. Listen as we unravel time and life itself. But is this a real or a fake podcast? Real, real, real. Okay, everyone's saying real. It is in fact fake. This does not exist. But you're welcome to take it if you wanted to take this as your podcasting. All right, next slide, please. Okay, for this one, Kurt Vonneguys. Its description is: join the co-host for a fun, digressive trip through Kurt Vonnegut canon. It's a book club, a comedy show, and a cavalcade of smart, entertaining segments. Discover Vonnegut works you've never read. We discover your Kurt favorites and cure the terrible disease of loneliness by going on a KV appreciation deep dive with a friendly caress of your fellow listeners. Real or fake? What does the chat think? One real, one fake. Real, fake. Oh, okay, we're split. Fake, real. It is in fact real. it's for those who are fans of Kurt Vonnegut, I encourage you. It's actually a fun one. It's a real one. next podcast, Sasquatch tracks. Okay, I should have prizes, I think, for right answers, but the prize is bragging rights here. So this podcast takes a scientific look at whether there are large animal species that remain undiscovered, with special emphasis on the Sasquatch in North America. The show looks at claims of ape-like relict hominoids and other animals purported to exist in various parts of the world. Sasquatch tracks, real or fake? What does chat say? Looks like real, all caps real. Okay, and real. Yes, correct. It is real. Sasquatch tracks. I've never listened to it, but it sounds like it might be interesting. Okay, last pair here. Top one is Beautiful Anonymous. The description is 1 phone call, 1 hour, no names, no holds barred. That's the premise behind this podcast, hearing stories from anonymous people. Every week, the phone line opens to one anonymous caller, and the host can't hang up first, no matter what. From shocking confessions and family secrets to philosophical discussions and shameless self-promotion, anything can and will happen. So Beautiful Anonymous, is that real or fake? What does the chat think? The audience think? I got a fake. One, fake. It is in fact real. Yeah, that's a real podcast. It's I purposely picked ones that are not maybe top list, but this one is hosted by Chris Gethard, who I think at some time was, I forgot his other thing, but he's got something else. Yeah, check it out if you're interested. There's some, yeah, it could get scary. I think they come with, if it's explicit, then they'll tell you if any warnings come with any categories. But the last one, super fans of science. Join these two co-hosts from two prestigious universities to discuss the latest discoveries published across all disciplines, learn about the future of artificial intelligence, global warming, medicine, and more. Super fans of science, real or fake? What is the verdict? Real, fake. One real, two real, one fake. Any more guesses? Okay, 3 real, 1 fake. Majority real so far. Okay, if none else, a reveal that this is a fake one. I apologize for deceiving you all. Another title, you're welcome to steal that one. I think it's got some, you could extend that. But again, thank you all for playing. It is a great big universe of that out there. And it's really, it's yeah, it's true. It sounded too good to be real. And thank you all for playing. So the next slide, I think, would go into our role play activity. So we have about 15 or so minutes left. Which probably take less than, we're aiming for like 5 minutes or so. But we encourage you all, the idea of this exercise, you play the host. And what we're going to do is going to break out into 2 breakout rooms, and each of us will be part, at least one of our team members will be part of the breakout room to help you with this. The assignment will be going through and doing some quick research on your celebrity guest. Congratulations, you've landed the celebrity guest on your podcast. It's a big deal. You've worked very hard on this. So your task now is to begin to think about some really good questions to ask your celebrity guest. And that will take us into, there's going to be a list of choices of celebrity guests. And one of us will be playing that guest. So once you develop the questions, after your research as a group, you're welcome to discuss this, amongst each other. I want you to begin thinking about that. And then we'll practice a few of those questions and see how they might play out in a role play. And then we'll come back as a group to discuss briefly any kind of, report out what you thought, how that went, and thinking about any other questions you might have about starting a podcast. Okay. Well, thank you all for taking part. Emily, take it away and let us know. Yes, so I put up here, thanks, Ivy. These are some of the categories we might include, and then we'll announce which actual celebrity guest you have in your group, and then we'll start to start from there for the exercise to begin developing questions.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to launch you all into the breakout rooms. You might want to, Rabia, you might want to grab the celebrity guests and pop them into the chat, because I'm not sure people will be able to see them in the breakout rooms.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. And I will go ahead and launch that here in just a moment. Let's wait until that gets into the chat and then I can do it.
Got it.
Awesome. Okay, great. And I will send you all a message when you have 2 minutes left before I bring you all back. So enjoy your discussion.
All right. Welcome back for those trickling in. Thank you for taking part in the exercise. We had two groups, two celebrities, presumably different, although I'm not sure what the other group had picked. But we have a few minutes left here, and I'd like to see if which group would like to start first to nominate a spokesperson. Let us know how it went, and let us know your celebrity guest and the type of questions you had come up with from your brief discussion. Any volunteers from either group? So yeah, we may have done the same one. So I can go first for our group, since we had a group and we had our celebrity guest Oprah Winfrey. Very exciting, and we thought first about her career. We thought about the person that, and also her as a brand that she represents. And here are the questions that we had come up with. The first being, what was your impetus for expanding your network to the O Network and beyond, her talk show? The second question, how do you define the Oprah Winfrey brand? And the last one we had come up with was, what advice would you give to someone looking to create their own brand? And I mean, for sure, she's a powerful force. A lot that she's touched upon in media and everything else, but she is definitely a worldwide icon. Anything to add, Curtis, Shanta, anything to add from that experience of thinking about questions to ask?
Yeah, I think it was just, it was hard. It was challenging for me because Oprah Winfrey is so influential and has her hands in so many different aspects. So you could really go a lot of different ways with a lot of different topics with her. So I think that it's just something for me to kind of reflect more on when thinking about guests, kind of who have diverse backgrounds, and how to structure an interview to kind of focus on one aspect instead of so much.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one question could lead to like an entire 45-minute conversation. Like that one question we have guests like that who Maggie knows, because she actually hosted one of our episodes with Jose Lopez in particular, and he went down a path which is very interesting, touched on a lot of different aspects from history to cultural significance to artificial intelligence, the whole gamut. It's a very interesting conversation, but that's kind of, I think, where the interesting stuff comes up is not the planned answers. So that's great. So anyone from the other group like to let us know what you did and who your celebrity guest was?
We had Michelle Obama. We had a very good Michelle Obama impersonator. There was a question about, just like simple, how are you doing? And like try to get into the episode. And then there was a question about a day in life as the first lady. And then another question was about parenting and having older children now. I think those are very relevant and people really can connect to that type of question. I don't know if any of you wanted to just share your experience and see how you feel about, getting put in the spot and interview someone.
Was one person interviewing Michelle, or were you all as a group interviewing her?
I can share. We all were interviewing her, but I think that, again, like Oprah Winfrey, it's someone who, has a book out, their own podcast. It's kind of, you wonder, the audience, have they already consumed all of this other information about her? Have they already listened to her podcast? Do they already know about all of these things? And so it's kind of, difficult to think about, what question is something that might be new information or something that might be entertaining to people. But also, like I shared with the group that I have a newborn like sitting on my lap right now. And so my orientation is like parenting and children. And so like my question, was birthed from the fact that this is my life right now. And so I'd be interested to know like what her life is like, in the same aspect.
And I apologize for cutting in. I just want to give a quick time check. We're about 3 minutes past time right now. So it seems like everyone's having a great time. So I don't want to slow it down, but just to cut in and let you know.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, I think that's really the conclusion of our workshop. We hope it was useful for you all. We hope that you learned something new. And we'd like to end with any final questions. Please let us know. You can contact us. You could go to our website and email us and let us know any other questions if you'd like to get more information from any one of our team members. There's a lot of different experience here. But thank you all for attending and for being with us during this time.
And I'd like to thank you all so much for presenting. This was a really fun and engaging presentation. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And I think that everyone who participated today has like a roadmap for, not just equipment, but a strategic plan and thoughts about what to do. So thank you so much for doing that, Rabih, Cassandra, Ivy, and Araceli. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. And with that, I just wanted to share with you all that we will be taking our lunch break for the time being here. Sorry, I'm switching over right now, just a moment. Great, so hopefully you can see the PowerPoint here. So we will be moving on, having our lunch break. If you are interested during your lunch break, we would welcome you to go ahead and join us to view the poster presentations. I'll drop that YouTube link in the chat. It should also be in the information that you received. So let me send that over to you now. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. We've got another exciting presentation coming up at 1 o'clock. So at 1 o'clock here in track 5, we're going to be doing a roundtable discussion. We're all in this together, evaluating community health worker initiative. Great, thank you all so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.